my camera vertical or this way, right?
I don't care. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Um, Hello, everybody, or welcome to the Max Revenue Show. We've taken like a 2 week hiatus. Also, haven't written the newsletter in 2 weeks or so. Uh, had kids sick, and then a golf weekend with the guys. So, trying to get this thing back up and rolling again and get it back on track. Finish the year strong. Micah, you and I were just talking about Ian Cognito and how he's doing. If you have not followed the journey over on YouTube, basically, Micah has brought in a new producer, very green, only like 6 months in the industry, and is basically training him up from scratch uh, on kind of Micah's method on cold outbound. It's all on cold calling primarily, and how to sequence it, how to follow up, how to track everything. And I know you guys just did. I think you just put up week 8 of what we're calling the Diary of a New Producer. So go check that out. But today we're just going to kind of do an update on Ian and everything new producer and what he's doing and how to build up producers from scratch with cold outbound. So Micah, I'm going to turn it over to you and you take it away.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it feels like we have been. Isn't it crazy? 2 weeks feels like 2 months since we did the show.
And
But
time flies in this industry. Like I look up and a week's by. I feel like when coming from whatever I did in the past to a new producer, like I just look up and it's Q4. It's like it's insane.
it's crazy. That's why it's like if you take a week off, or like not a week, but let's say you take a month and kind of lollygag and don't do anything, it really truly does show up like 4 months. If you're truly calling 4 or 5 months out, like I do, it's like you notice. I look back at my year, I'm like, oh, that was a drought. Well, I didn't do crap that fall, or I was busy with renewals and couldn't make a ton of outbound, right? And then it catches up to you quick. So, um, yeah, no, I think you were talking, and we were like, man, let's kind of give an update on Ian Cognito. And for those again who haven't followed the journey, we're on week 8. I just thought it'd be a cool idea because I'm just hitting my 2 year date. September 21st is my 2 year date of my new journey. 2 years with my new agency. I know Trey, you're 7 months in, 8 months in, 9 months in now.
Mm-hmm.
And we always you would talk like, hey, it'd be kind of cool if we would have let people look behind the curtain into like what we got going on, right? And so now with since we hired Ian at my agency and I was his mentor, I'm like, I'm gonna just do this deal. And we've had a lot of ton of good feedback because we're really trying to give a perspective. And I know you said, Trey, like it's a lot about cold calling and sequencing and prospecting. That is kind of true, but I would say it's actually way more than that, way more interesting because every single time we talk, I'm just basically pulling out the main themes from our conversations. And we usually it's about, we'll talk anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour every Monday. And there's just a lot of different valuable things that come up, not just for a new producer, but if you're listening to this and you're a sales manager or you're a mentor, there's a lot of different lessons I kind of learn as I'm mentoring someone, proactively. And I'm just to be straightforward, I'm not this, Ian's manager, really, but I am kind of a quasi manager. I guess you could say I'm really his mentor. But so yeah, the journey's been really cool, and it's just yeah, I would say the main thing is it's just a lot more than just cold calling and like how to script. Because once you kind of know that, you don't got to keep talking about it, right? You don't got to beat the horse. Now it's good to refresh yourself. But I think it's very important to talk about what's actually going on in his world at that moment. So um, yeah, I don't know, what specifically you want, or what questions do you have for me, Trey, about it, or is there anything you
Yeah,
want me to
let's
kind
just
of dive
kind of
into?
recap. Let's talk highlights of the first 8 weeks. I know he's already written his first piece of business, and he's kind of getting into the groove of trying to hit those weekly KPIs or metrics or whatever. So why don't you just, I guess, tell us kind of what you laid out for him and like, hey, here's what I want you to do, and then let's talk a little bit about the results that he's had so far and how many
Sure.
meetings or how much new revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So week 1 was all about laying the groundwork, and we set out to make 200 calls a week, about 50 calls a day. I also said, hey, don't get so wrapped up in the meeting metric because you can't. There's just a lot of things you can't control, and you're selling a commodity. Everyone has insurance. Most people are gonna be happy. But I said, control what you can, and that's just the cold calling. So, and all that being said, I'm not like, if you don't miss your 200, I'm gonna put you on a performance plan, or like report you to anybody. There's nothing like that. It's just like, hey man, life happens. For example, last week he made 55 calls, right? And that's actually, in episode 8, we talk about that. Like, hey, one of the coolest about being a producer is the flexibility. And so he still set a meeting with a really nice prospect last week. He just worked really hard Monday and Tuesday, and he knew Wednesday, Thursday, Friday he was going to be out. Right? He had family stuff. But that's, to me, my favorite part about being a producer is that flexibility lifestyle. And I would just say there was some debate on LinkedIn about a work life balance, and I don't take any calls after if I'm with my family. And I'm like, dude, I'm kind of the opposite, because to me it's like it's just life, right? It's like if I'm chilling and my brother calls me on a Saturday, I'll take the call, or a friend. So if a client calls me, sure, why not take the call? Is it that much work? And you could disagree with me. I don't care. Some people are about boundaries. I just always, to me, I think clients really appreciate that. And it's like, am I that important? And does my family really care? No, it's just life. I mean, how many times do we see a family out at dinner and everyone's on their cell phone anyway? So it's like, get over it, dude. Like, it's like, I don't know. That's just my little soapbox on that topic. And someone actually commented on LinkedIn. And they said, hey, it'd be interesting to hear your feedback, Max and Mike. And I never did respond. So if you're listening out there, that's my response. But anyways, I think I got way off subject here. So how is Ian doing? He's doing great, man. He closed a $10,000 deal, week number 4 or 5, I think. He's got
Dude,
a
that's crazy.
proposal. Yeah, he's got a proposal on a $7,000 deal. Um, this today, actually. We talk about that in episode 8. The coolest part, and we talked about this last week, episode 7, is, man, he has a meeting with a $1.5 million premium account. You know, way over his. If you're an outside producer, you're like, this guy should not be in that deal. You just got it from cold calling, right? And that's how it can happen. So, you can go months. So that was a really good reminder for myself. Like, hey, man, don't ever sell yourself short. Like, don't be afraid to call upstream. Don't. Yeah, it's just like, if he can do it, you can do it, right? And so it's like a shot of confidence for me too. Even though I'm not like lacking confidence in calling bigger accounts, but sometimes it's like I start to just settle for some smaller stuff. And it's like, no, dude, you can get in those big accounts. So yeah, but that's been his. I don't honestly know what his call. I'd say most weeks he gets around 175 ish calls to 200, because life happens, stuff comes up. It is tough to get to that. That's why I think the 200 is a good barometer, because it's like it. You'll notice once you get in the grind and in the trenches, it's not as easy. Like, oh, 50 calls a day, I can do that. But then you start to getting it. It's like the human element comes in. It's like, So yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to add on that is, especially when you're starting from scratch, so you've built out that list of 300, 400, 500, that first time you're going through your first 100 or 200, it is way slower than normal. You know what I'm saying? Because you're kind of scrubbing it as you go. You call, it's not the right contact, so then you're calling another. But that your second time through, then I'd be willing to bet Ian gets through all of his calls kind of like month 2 and on, because he's kind of scrubbing that list. And oh, well, I call Sally and here's her cell phone number. Whereas right now, when he's calling into XYZ, he doesn't know who the hell he's asking for. It's going to take 2, 3, 4 phone calls just to kind of figure out your angle. So I'd be willing to bet. I mean, I would look at it, if he's making 175 without a scrubbed list, I'd say he's going to be hitting his numbers pretty solid once he gets through that first go around.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about, I'm a big fan of Insurance X Date, because you get through that first year, and now you're calling out 4 months out, and you have all your notes in there, and you can save the leads and everything, and you can just, man, a lot of times I'll bust out 40 calls in 2.5 hours, right? I mean, it's just, and I have now, decent sized book I've built up. I'm still, in grind mode, but it's pretty crazy. So, yeah, no, so I'm super proud of him, man. I think it's fun for me too, because it's, you know, it is stressful building your own book back, right? I'm on year, just literally not even quite year 2, about a couple days away, hitting the 2-year mark. But I got my own stress, but it kind of feels nice to kind of help someone else out, but not have to manage them and micromanage them. So from my perspective, I like that, like where it's like I'm just purely there to help them, right? And
Hmm.
I'm getting, compensated, but not like anything that would move the needle, and um, so yeah, it's fun. It's very fun. And so just to give the listeners kind of a, maybe I'll just kind of go over what I just the bullets of week 8, just to give you guys a flavor of like what I'm talking about on the series. And again, go check us out on YouTube. Not only do we have this series, but we have a ton of other good I do shorts on there. We got like our first 50 videos were just everything from like whiting out premiums and how to explain the insurance game, just tons of good stuff. But this week 8, just for a flavor for you guys, we talked about flexibility. To whom much is given, much is required was the first thing. Second thing is the hottest prospects in the world, who they are, why to go after them, how to go after them, how to respond to someone that says we've already done due diligence, um, how to obtain market knowledge, how to have a not a fit for everyone mindset, and then why nice prospects suck. Right. So, um, so those were the 6 kind of things that I dived into and these are anywhere from 6 minutes to maybe 15 at the longest. So they're not like real long, but I think there's a ton of good info in them. I'm biased, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at your bullets. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna go watch that right away.
Yeah. There's your next 5 newsletters.
Yeah, right.
uh,
The based off of what you said, the one thing that really stood out to me was talking about like him getting out over his skis. That was one of the things I was told. Well, you kind of get, not that I was told one way, you kind of get competing advice. You'll have one person that says niche, another person that says doesn't niche. You'll say one person that says network, one person that says no, you need a cold call. You'll have one person that says, oh, you need to get comfortable with small deals and then you can graduate up. Then you have other people that are like, nah, man, just go get in anywhere and bring somebody with you. And him talking about being out over his skis, even, I think geographically he is kind of out on his own, right? And he's a couple of hours away from the office.
about an hour 10. So I just say, hey man, you don't got to come to the office. Like I don't care. Just I trust you, right?
Gotcha. But in a way, he's from a day to day, he's kind of out on an island.
Yep.
Um, the I'm kind of in the same situation, and I have a tendency like you to kind of like, that that's kind of big. Maybe I'll pull, and just kind of stay in my lane. But I think, like you said, when you're cold calling in, as long as you can have some market knowledge, have a decent idea of a reasonable idea of what you're talking about, it's amazing that what the doors you can open. And if you can, even if you are out over your skis, I think a lot of this business is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And like you just jump off the cliff and then you learn how to fly on your way down.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the way it feels to me a lot of times. I'm still new in this business. Coming up on, I'm about to finish my, I'm about to finish my 5th year, I guess. And it's, I don't know, man. I still feel like I'm just kind of shooting from the hip. And I think that, so we talked about newsletter the other day, having, some type of here that you can bounce stuff off of, and then, having underwriter or broker relationships that you can ask different things. I There's so many industries, there's so much different carriers and coverage and nuances and exclusions and, different appetites and there's just so much to learn. I think, I don't know, at least for me, I tend to be a little more on the anxious side. This is just what the career is going to be. You just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and after a while, you just kind of get used to it. Your capacity for the uncomfortability gets bigger, and you just, hey, I'll just figure it out as I go, or at least that's the way I feel.
Great points, man. I mean, there's so much nuance to this deal, and we try to make it all black or white. Because as you said, niche, not niche. Start small, start big, whatever. Right? It's just like invest your time in learning. Don't learn, just go sell. Like I don't know. So I think, as with everything, when you're browsing around social media or you're even following Max Revenue Channel, don't be so quick to just be like, oh my God, they said to do this and I'm doing this. I suck. No, there is like nuance, dude. There is so much nuance, and I think like I think our country, from a political side and just macroeconomic side of things would be much better if people just understood that. Like, hey, just because the social media says this or the TV says that, like, there's a lot of gray area in a lot of different topics, right? But when you get down to the sales thing and then you get down to insurance, it's no different. There is so much gray area. There's so much nuance. And that's kind of boring, right? To kind of play it safe. That's boring. That's not sexy. So it's why, our content or anybody's content, we're all guilty a little bit of glamorizing our stance, right? And planting our flag publicly. But I think if you talk to anybody real talk, there's freaking nuance, man.
Well,
And I
it
think
depend. It depends. That doesn't sell.
no, exactly, yeah, for sure. So, and you've taught me that. I mean, to kind of get more out there with that stuff, kind of the marketing side of it, and but that's why I think having a mentor is important, right? Because they kind of can tell you, like, dude, don't sweat that, man, or it's just like, yeah, they can be that just sound of reason for you. One other thing that was interesting, you were saying like getting out over your skis, and I think this is kind of that whole, it's the old saying like ignorance is bliss. As a younger guy, like sometimes if you get around the wrong older people, they can really pollute you and f with your head and actually create habits in you that are worse for you than if you would have not have been around anybody. So, and I know you've talked about this, Trey. It's like be careful who your mentor is and who your circle is and who you're surrounding yourself with it because man, I remember when I moved to Houston and with MMA, and I start talking to some of these older producers, some crusty old guys who are set in their ways, and they're good people, they're smart, but they're like, yeah, Houston's over brokered. There's a broker on every corner. No, construction guys never BOR anything. Man, it works for other markets, but not for construction. They got a bid, they got to see a bid, and it's like you start to see and hear this stuff, and you start to believe it, right? And then you're sitting there talking with your buddies, and be like, yeah, and all of a sudden you look like, wait, I sound like the old guy. It's like, so yeah, protect yourself, man. And make sure you find a good mentor. Like, and there's nothing wrong with old mentors, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying uh, if you can find the guy who's old, but also like kind of mindful of things and aware, that's the silver bullet right there. But
Yeah, I can't harp enough on that. I made a lot of mistakes as to who I listened to. I actually have a post about this tomorrow. It's like some were spoon fed their books or gifted their books, or like they just literally did it in a different time, right? And it's like, or they're a big name in their city. Like you really have to like go kind of like check the receipts to see how they did it
yep,
before. Like I'm trying to find somebody that's doing it how I can do it. I'm not a networker. That's not me. So like, who's somebody that's done it cold outbound? And there was just nobody in our office that had. And so you get caught up. You start to watch everybody, and you kind of follow their pace, or you kind of fall into the routine that you see. But you got to remember, you're not playing the same game that they're playing. That's one thing that I wish I Ian does not realize how lucky he is to have this right off the bat, because there's a lot of guys that just wash out, um, because they didn't put the pieces of the puzzle together until it was too late, and they had too much ground to cover in too little a time. And I mean, that's definitely, I'm guilty of that, or was. The one thing I wanted to, so I say all that to say, however you're building your book, whether it's networking or cold calling or whatever it is, it's like find somebody that has done it the way you are planning on doing it. It's like you and I have been talking about golf swings. It's like, why? I'm not going to go to some guy that teaches, the single plane swing if that's not how I'm trying to learn how to hit the golf ball. If I'm, or like, I'm not probably not going to go take lessons from somebody who's 5'5" and has a a steeper like, you got to find somebody that's did it the way that you are doing it, or that's like fit for you. So this one question I had, and we're talking about the gray area a lot, And, obviously when you are putting content out there, you got to plant your flag, you got to take a stand, you speak in absolutes. Because if you just go out there and say, hey, I'm Max Revenue, and wish you good luck. And how do you do it? Well, it depends. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't work. And the same thing with sales. If you just go out there and just you have to kind of like draw hard lines in the sand in order to get any traction. But I guess if we're being honest on this or not honest, if we're taking off the hyperbole and talking more directly, whether it's networking, cold calling, whatever it AOR quoting, is there a metric? Like if I'm a listener, I'm a new listener out there, and I'm like, I don't like I will invest in learning how to cold call, but I'm kind of more of a networker, or I like doing drop or whatever it is. Is there one kind of base metric that you would recommend or that you could follow that's like, hey, if you're hitting this number, then you're going to be okay? So I was thinking, me personally, I was thinking that would have to kind of be like new business meetings. If you're doing new business meetings, it would, X amount of new business meetings, then you're probably on the right direction. But then it kind of goes also back to whether you're quoting or doing VORs, so it's
Yeah.
like, can you think of like one metric where it's like, if you hit this metric, regardless of how you prospect, whether you BOR or quote or whatever, if you can just make sure you hit this, because when we were at the old firm, it was 2 new business meetings a week, and you're going to be okay. And I can tell you, I know in our little young guns thing, uh, I won it one year for a number of new business meetings, and the revenue was not there. I mean, it wasn't bad, but like it wasn't like I did a huge revenue number. But I got a boatload of new meetings because I could, like if I would cold call, I could get somebody, lean on somebody to get that meeting. Like, hey man, just dude, give me 10 minutes. You can get a lot of people to just give you 10 minutes, but that doesn't mean
Yep.
you're having a meaningful meeting. So what are your thoughts?
I'm glad you brought that up because I used to be big about meetings too. I think my first year at MMA, I think I said 85 meetings, which maybe that's great. I don't know. It's not. It's a little more than one a week. Um, but I felt like I was having a lot of new meetings, but a lot of them sucked. Right? They weren't great because I was coming from a place of I just want to get a meeting. I want to, just talk with me, man. And then I got to this place like I kept that up. It was probably 80. Then I'd go to 60. And then my book started to grow, but I'd always get around 60 to 80 meetings a year. But I got to this point, I was like, what's the point of meeting? I just want to have a conversation, right? And so I stopped. I guess I went into more like, hey, how many conversations am I having with people? It's kind of more of a, for me, it was like, how many conversations? That's when I started keeping a track of the follow up later list. And I started, because if I talk to someone and they tell me they love their agent, but they would agree to meet with me, like, I don't know. I mean, take the meeting if you want, but I just feel like I've seen those go nowhere so many times where I'm not going to just waste my time. Now, if they're open to hearing a different way of doing things, yeah, but and it's why I moved a lot of my first meetings to phone. Like, hey, let's just have a phone call first before we even meet. Like, now if they're within 20 minutes of my house, I'll go drive and meet there. But I'm not going to drive 3 hours to do a 15-minute intro meeting, right? So let's just talk first to make sure it makes sense. I just want to just see where you're coming at as a buyer, and then I want to share kind of my philosophy and what I've seen work well and how I help people. And if you think that makes sense, yep, let's meet from there. Um,
So maybe
which
research
yeah.
calls. Maybe that's the thing, is like number of meaningful research calls.
Yeah. I don't even know if I would call them a research call. Okay. Oh, because you're saying you get past the first meeting onto like, hey, we actually did due
No, no, no.
diligence.
I'm just saying like the a meaningful conversation, whether that's
Yeah,
a walk-in or over lunch because you're networking,
sure.
or you're just having a real conversation. They're not in love with their agent. They're willing to hear you out, like hear you
Yep.
out conversations.
Yeah. So the hard part about that though is you can't control how many conversations you have a week, right? Because you're talking like, what's the metric to know I'm on the right track? And this is where for me, I know it's old school, but I still always come back to what can I control? I can only control my output. So if you're a networker, if you're a door dropper, if you're an emailer, if you have to know how many whatever to get conversations, which is what I think is a really important metric. But all I can control is my conversations, or my output, right? And I can control how many cold calls I make. That's for sure. But I can't control if no one picks up the phone. I can't control if, you know, everyone loves their agent. Um, but I can control what I say, my messaging a little bit, right? And have some maybe influence over people on the fence. So that's where it kind of comes back to conversations. Because if you're making 300 calls a week and you're just sucking, well, then you got to kind of look at like, are you talking to anyone? No. Okay. Well, why aren't you? Maybe you got to find better numbers. Maybe you're calling too large of accounts and you can't get through to anyone that's meaningful. There's so many different parts. So to answer your question, I don't think there is really a good like metric. I think it's more of like for me, it's kind of like when you wake up every day, am I moving my business forward? Am I growing my business? Am I doing something that's moving me closer to growth or not? Right. And it's like, and that's where it's like, I have 3 hours this afternoon. What can I do? I could browse LinkedIn, send a couple emails, or no, I can pick up the phone and actually move business forward. You know, I can call people, I can do whatever. So yeah, I don't think there's a good metric, man. I wish there was. Um, and this is something I said to Ian on one of our calls, or maybe it was to you. I was like, dude, any producer can go out there and make 50 cold calls in a day, especially when they just, let's say you set a meeting, you had 3 conversations, they said call me back, you're pretty high. Well, anyone can go back that next day and make 50 calls again because now you're amped up from the day before. But I want to find the producer that can make 50 calls on the previous day, get their teeth kicked in, have zero success, talk to no one, and get up the next day and make 50 calls again. Right? That's kind of like that's the kind of producer I want to hire. Because you have that intrinsic drive and you're always kind of looking for like, I mean, how can I grow? So I don't think there's a metric on that, but it's like whether you're a networker, a door dropper, a caller, like you're always looking how to, those guys, those old guys are just creative with their networks and they're always looking for who they can be introed with, who they knew back in high school, who goes to their church. They're always looking. Those are the guys that I've found be successful. So I would say I would measure it as like, what are you doing every day to just grow your business? Like, how are you growing it? Like, and I don't know if there's a metric for that though. So I don't know. That was maybe a long rant for for no value because I didn't give any like aha moment to anyone. But
Got it. No, that's good.
yeah,
I do have to hop off. I've got this guy calling me saying, dude, I need you to call me before 10 a.m.
yeah, okay.
So let's run. If you are not subscribed to the Max Revenue newsletter, do that. Max Revenue letter.beehive.com. Go check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Micah's got a lot of good stuff over there. And check out the Diary of a New Producer on YouTube. It's good stuff. We appreciate you listening. And with that, we will catch you next week.
Adios.
Adios, everybody. See ya.